Since the era that the pyramids were built, almost every generation recognizes their mention and understands their significance. The miraculous engineering feats and grand designs have made these pyramids an important typology for anyone who is aiming to understand the fundamentals of architecture, engineering, or interior design.
The word pyramid describes a building with a very special shape. Egyptian pyramids had 4 sides sloping up to a point. The Egyptians believed that their king was like a god living on earth. When he died, his body was made into a mummy, so it would survive forever. The Egyptians needed a special place for the mummy, a pyramid. The pyramid looked as if its top would reach the sky, so it was an excellent place to bury a godlike king. The development of the pyramids represents one of the most remarkable achievements in architectural history. The architects and builders of ancient Egypt demonstrated advanced engineering, mathematical, and organizational skills long before modern technology existed. This period is important because it reflects how architecture was deeply connected to religion, culture, and power. The pyramids, especially those at Giza, were not only monumental tombs for pharaohs, but also symbols of their divine authority and a means to ensure their journey to the afterlife. The work of Egyptian architects during this time laid a foundation for future architectural innovations and continues to inspire engineers and designers today for its precision, scale, and cultural meaning. The pyramids of Egypt were built during the Old Kingdom, especially the Fourth Dynasty, a period often called the Age of the Pyramids. This era was marked by a strong, centralized government and a society deeply rooted in religious beliefs about the afterlife.
Many factors influenced the development of the pyramids. One of the first factors was religion. The Egyptians believed in an afterlife in which the deceased would live eternally. They believed that once a deceased person was placed in their tomb, his or her spirit would return. The Egyptians also believed that their pharaohs were gods, and they honored their so-called divine pharaohs by building elaborate tombs, called pyramids, for them. The very first pyramid, which was built at Saqqara, was built as a lasting memorial for King Djoser. This first pyramid resulted in the development of many more pyramids later on. The development of the pyramids was led by many of the pharaohs themselves, who followed the example of the pyramid at Saqqara. The strong central government led by the pharaoh was necessary for the Egyptians to undertake the magnitude of the project. The pharaohs were very driven, and work on the pyramids was very important to them. For example, historians think that King Khufu lived near the pyramids so he could directly oversee the progress. He also gave power to some of his family members so they could split his responsibilities and so he could focus on the project at hand. As so-called deity and the supreme authority, the pharaohs were able to have a tight rule. The pyramid workers thought that in building the pyramid for Pharaoh, they were building it for God, and it was their duty to him. Some historians believe that the workers who built the pyramids were slaves. However, other research shows that this is not the case. Slaves were utilized in quarries, where they cut stone for the pyramids, but the workers who physically constructed the pyramids were skilled workmen who were paid for their labor and well taken care of. The knowledge and skills needed to build the pyramid, which included working with stone and maneuvering large pieces, was developed by work on the obelisks, another Egyptian typology. Another factor that influenced the development of the pyramids was the Nile River. Every year, the Nile would flood, which prevented the farmers and common laborers from doing their usual work. They would utilize this time each year to help the other workmen with the pyramids. The high water levels were ideal for transporting the quarried stone. The stone was placed on barges and floated down the flooded river to a location close to the pyramids. The Nile was also influential because it created fertile regions along its banks. These regions were good for agricultural purposes. Agriculture played a large role in the well-being of the Egyptian economy, and this in turn affected the development of the pyramids. Funding for the pyramids also came from military conquests and taxes. The combination of religious, political, social, cultural, and environmental factors all played a large role in the development of the pyramids.
Although there are many theories of how the Egyptian pyramids were built, as of now we have no definitive proof of any one idea. The most commonly accepted ideas agree on some aspects. However, the more complicated it gets, the more cause for speculation. For instance, most Egyptologists agree that Egyptians would have been able to use simple tools on the softer stone. This may have included chisels, saws, and simple drills, all most likely made of copper. For harder stones, however, they may have combined saws with abrasives such as sand in order to chip away as needed. Furthermore, it is an indisputable fact that there had to have been comprehensive knowledge of the stars, because the pyramid's position is almost entirely based on astrology, yet we still do not understand how they were able to place them so precisely. Nonetheless, without the modern tools or even less complicated systems that they used in the early 19th and 20th centuries, it is remarkable what Egyptians were able to accomplish. Now, getting into the more concrete and thought-out theories. First, we have the ramp theory, which focuses on the idea that they may have built long ramps that reach from the ground level to the level being built, and the laborers would use that to transport the stones that were to be set. This is based on a ramp that was found in a 4,500-year-old quarry, where it was used to haul the alabaster stones up and out. The system would have been composed of a main ramp in which poles were embedded, altogether connected closely with two staircases on either side. With the stones atop a sled, the slaves would have been able to hoist the slabs from pole to pole. There is dispute about whether this was the only type of ramp they may have used. Some people argue that they may have used gently sloped ramps that may have curved around the entire structure, or even internal ramps set up on the interior of the pyramid. Meanwhile, true critics of this theory claim that just because ramps were used for quarries doesn't mean that they were used for pyramids. Furthermore, alabaster is a much softer stone than that which was used for the pyramids. The second most accepted theory revolves around a substance that is not too different from modern-day concrete. Civil engineers from the Ruth College of Engineering have concluded that Egyptians may have used some sort of concrete-type mixture that was poured into molds. As stated in their article about this topic, they found traces of rapid chemical reaction, which did not follow natural crystallization. That reaction would have been inexplicable if the stones were quarried, but perfectly comprehensible if one accepts that they were cast like concrete. If this is true, they believe that it would have only been used for the uppermost parts of the pyramid. This concrete-like mixture would have been based on a limestone slurry not dissimilar to the concrete we use today. The theory suggests that soft limestone was dissolved in Nile-fed pools to make a watery slurry. Then lime and salt were added. After evaporation, this mixture would become a clay-like, moldable, wet concrete. They would pour into molds on site, let it set in a few days, and then remove the blocks. Opponents of this theory argue that the inconsistency of stone shape on the pyramids supports a quarried stone rather than poured. And more so, to create as much slurry as they would have needed, it would require massive manufacturing sites and massive amounts of lime. On the less likely and more fantastical side of the theory spectrum, we have some pretty far-fetched ones. For example, there are people that believe in a theory called the antediluvian theory, which states that the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx were built by the superior race of humans that existed before the Great Flood. Included in this category, we have heard of a character called Seth, who is said to have communicated through a Ouija board that in Egypt, people would visualize the pyramid in their imagination, then through their chanting and the use of certain vowels and pitches, they actually changed the air where that building was going to be. Other interesting theories state that because there are pictures of a face and pyramid-like monuments on Mars' surface, it was actually Martians who built the Egyptian pyramids and the Sphinx. Or, some people believe in the psychic Edgar Cayce, who favors the theory that the inhabitants of the mythical city Atlantis sailed to Egypt and built the pyramids, as well as some of the other pyramids worldwide.
The Egyptian pyramids consisted of intentional spatial elements, compositions, organization, and utilized principles that not only created a distinct typology, but also conveyed the beliefs and values of the Egyptians. These design characteristics are most prevalent and can be compared and contrasted in the Step Pyramid, the Bent Pyramid, and the Pyramids of Giza. The Egyptians believed that after death, the soul was split into two halves. Half of it would stay on earth within the body, and half would ascend to heaven. The soul staying in the body was depicted through a specific element called wall relief cuts, which will be further discussed later on. The soul ascending to heaven was represented by the overall shape of the pyramid. The walls of the pyramid resolve at a point that draws your eye up to the heavens, where the dead pharaohs reside with the gods. The earliest kind of Egyptian pyramid was the Step Pyramid, which was first built for Pharaoh Djoser in 2620 BC. Located in Saqqara, Djoser's pyramid became the most well-known step pyramid used as a precedent. One of the most significant elements was the figural wall reliefs. These carried tales of the former pharaohs' supposed journeys and interactions with the gods. Figural wall reliefs were decorative engravings and panels that were placed to appear as false doors. In King Djoser's first pyramid, he is depicted dressed in various ritual garments, holding various objects with text that is engraved below. In the images, Djoser is often performing a ritual course that follows the said festival, which celebrated a pharaoh's authority and power even after death. The figural wall reliefs were also practical for movement and defining spaces. In Djoser's step pyramid, the lower level was broken up into 400 storage chambers, rooms, and corridors. The relief wall panels were a method of connecting the numerous linearly organized spaces, as well as offering context to what each chamber was related to. Something important to note is that these relief decorations offered great insight into the customs and rituals during Djoser's reign. Yet, because of the size and being underground, these were not focal points and rather one of the many elements that contributed to the greater whole. In terms of the rest of the movement, the entrance of the step pyramid began with compression through small courts. As you continued, there was a gradual expansion through a passageway. Finally, there would be a relief or expansion in the primary central court, surrounded by 40 columns organized in 2 rows. These columns were an element that drew the eye upward to look at the initially open sky before a roof was added. Other elements incorporated were clear story windows to allow light back into the now enclosed space. Additionally, Djoser's pyramid intentionally utilized the space around it and engaged with the site. The pyramid was surrounded by a marked entrance with a colonnade, south court, Hebsed court, north and south courts, a serdab court, north and south houses, and the tea temple. Marking the entire perimeter of the complex was a stone enclosure wall. The Bent Pyramid was built first for King Snefru during the 4th dynasty, and it was located in Dashur. It continued to incorporate wall reliefs similar to King Djoser's pyramid. It also served as a monumental mass because of its shift in slope and appearance when structural integrity was increased. An element that was particularly prominent as an organizational method was the pillar. When used repeatedly and monolithically, pattern, rhythm, and movement were created. Snefru's Bent Pyramid specifically consisted of 10 columns carved with 3 faces on each. Because of their decorative nature, these columns created a similar impact to the panel relief walls. The columns provided further details of the beliefs and customs of the Egyptians in the 4th dynasty. Finally, there are the pyramids of Giza, which were built for King Khufu, King Khafra, and King Menkora in the 4th dynasty. The 3 pyramids were organized in cardinal directions and theorized to be intentionally aligned with the Orion constellation and the Sirius star, and this was because the Egyptian gods were linked to the stars. The alignment of the pharaoh's tombs could have also symbolized immortality, since the stars Orion and Sirius never rise or set. Furthermore, the pyramids of Giza were built with geological awareness. Located in the Giza Plateau, each pyramid's base was built and stabilized along the horizontal strike of the plateau, and this allowed the 3 to be at similar elevations. Lastly, similar to Djoser's complex, the 3 pyramids of Giza became a complex with many surrounding structures and elements. One of these specific elements was the causeways, which provided slivers of light in the enclosed walkways, and this created movement between the 3 major pyramids and the secondary smaller ones. In general, the numerous elements of the complex have been theorized to represent and serve as a part of the pharaoh's funeral ceremony.
All of this to say that these pyramids are incredibly important precedents for all architects, engineers, and designers to this day. The technological developments were beyond their time and impacted the world in immeasurable ways. By combining numerous design principles, engineering feats, cultural, social, and political significance, the Egyptians managed to create something that would define their legacy and be the foundation for many years of excellence.